mechanical sense, or in the sense in which there is no kind of beginning. The ability to repeat the beginning act, the beginner act, is here the essential repetition, I think. One philosopher, great philosopher, Husserl, believed that in fact to be a beginner is indeed the highest aspiration, and towards the end of his life he did say that perhaps only now he could say about himself that he's truly a beginner, that he's truly beginning again. So to begin again is the most important repetition in that context. Yes, is to begin again, is to be able to not to take for granted anything that you have, as it were, done already, but to begin again is perhaps the most important repetition in that case. And that is a different one, but not unrelated to the internal reoccurrence, the internal repetition.
Would you say that in a way the art or the creative act is in the method even more than in the object, as only through the reinvention of the method can you actually make something new?
Well, temporarily, of course, one has a method up to a point. It depends how you take it. You see, the problem is when people are, as it were, searching for a method, and once they felt that they have something like method, then they insist on the mechanical repetition of within that method, and that is where they cease to contribute what I call the aletheia, what I call the revealing the possible world. To reveal a possible world, one has to step out. How to step out, how to create for yourself a kind of Archimedean point from which you can, as it were, abstain from assimilated into existing picture of the world. That is the real task. The real task is how to make it possible. What kind of strategy could enable you to extricate yourself from a given set of beliefs and assumptions and so on, even your own. So that is where my critique of so-called method is. Yes, it's not a critique of method in absolute terms, but in relative terms, in the sense that once one accepts method, once method is taken for granted, then the possibility of making in that sense is curtailed, is pretty limited. And there are endless ways in which different people have tried to indeed to create the condition for such a Archimedean the condition which will allow them to discover something hitherto unknown. Not only unknown, but sometimes not even imaginable. Yes, please.
Thank you very much. It's interesting what you said about preparing for the surprise, in a sense. And it's true when one looks at the whole question of preparing for the unexpected, in a sense. How would you would you put any value, or would you, in this scheme of things, how would you bring in a couple of things? One is to wait, and the second is the question of chance, to prepare for chance and to relate to chance. Does that come into this, and the whole importance of waiting?
Of course, in the beginning of the 20th century there was this great poem by Mallarmé, which is in French called "Le dé jamais n'abolira le hasard," which means the throw of dice never abolishes chance. And that poem was, there were things like this already in the ancient world, but in the modern world it was the first poem that was written not in column, page by page, but across the pages is a different kind of typography. And essentially, the throw of chance never approaches, the throw of dice never approaches chance. So chance has become, the aleatory thing became so much important for us precisely because it allows possibilities that otherwise would be excluded. And in a secular world, it certainly plays an enormous role. For the believer, it's more difficult, of course. For the believer, there is no chance. There is fate and there is determination, predetermination. But in a secular world, chance became extremely important in this respect. Yes, and Duchamp, following Mallarmé, was very much inspired by Mallarmé, and made himself a number of works. You know, for example, the one in which the same length strings is dropped from a certain height, and then there is a profile made of this of the strings, which is now no longer stretched. And in these works, chance is the main player. And indeed, even the large glass, when it was cracked by chance, was welcomed by Duchamp as a way of completing the work. But of course, you see, we have schooling, yes, which largely determine that picture of the world, that frame, the one which already framed, you know. Once I asked Richard Hamilton about his friend Lawrence Alloway, who played an incredible role, especially for the London group and so on. And I asked him, how come that Lawrence Alloway was so intelligent and so able to connect with so many different things with such swiftness and so on. So Richard Hamilton smiled widely and he said, well, he never went to school, he was too deep. So, you see, every society does makes incredible effort to determine the repetition in this mechanical sense. The idea that the world is largely closed, in fact. And indeed, already Plato in the Republic, he says, even if the poet was a great poet, and I could see that and recognize it, I certainly will not allow him to stay in the Republic if he did not sing the praise of the Republic. And ever since, you can see that every society exercises people who dare to say something that is clearly contradictory with currently held beliefs. Yes? And some society even use physical punishment, as the Chinese are still doing. You know, the recently Peace Nobel Prize winner was not even allowed to go to collect his prize. On the contrary, his wife apparently has been imprisoned as a punishment for the attempt. So it's a different society, you know, and different society until very recently would exile the people who wrote things that were, the Soviet Union were immensely proficient in doing that. And other countries, other cultures have other ways to act against something that threatened their particular picture of the world. So, in fact, not everybody realizes to the extent to which we are dependent on certain kind of fragile consensus and system of beliefs, and that works of art are among the most, how should I say, the most fearsome candidates in the possibility of subverting certain beliefs and certain consensus. So that is another reason why there would be, insofar as works of art are truly doing their work, which is not always the case, but when they do their work in that sense, they are inevitably in that difficult position vis-à-vis a given culture, a different society.